Time now to check out Yamaha's all-new 1000cc sports machine, loosely based on the popular full-on R1. This naked version goes by the designation the FZ1. At the heart of the FZ1 is a massaged R1 motor tuned more for the street, with its smaller carbs, heavier crank, and redesigned head. The reason for the head swap is because the 1000cc inline 4 now sits in a steel double cradle frame. Up front, you'll find a conventional fork, however the brakes and wheel are straight off the R1. While out back, a single fully adjustable piggyback reservoir shock helps keep the rubber down. So, how does the FZ1 work? Well, this week we invited the owner of this Yamaha's predecessor, the FJ, to sample the new one. And here's what Steve Bradford had to say. So Steve, here we are at an old Air Force base, World War II Air Force base. Perfect place to sample and talk about a street fighter like this Yamaha. Now you've got an FJ 1200, what'd you think?
This bike is a lot more nimble than mine. It's got a more lively motor. It really goes, it handles very well, sets up for the corners nicely. Really enjoyed it.
This bike is obviously based on the R1, but there are some differences. Let's talk about the motor first of all. Side draft carburation, smaller carbs, they've lowered the compression somewhat, increased the flywheel somewhat. What did you think of the motor?
Well, they talk a lot about detuning motorcycles to make them sort of the naked bikes. This bike has plenty of them. They have not detuned it to the point of making it boring.
Would you say spirited for the motor?
I certainly would. I'd agree with that. It's got a lot more at the top end of the RPM range than my FJ ever did. It really goes.
And smooth, right?
No vibrations to speak of. I didn't feel anything in the foot pegs, the hand grips, or anything like that. I noticed for a modern sport bike, I was surprised to see rubber-mounted foot pegs. Right. Very nice touch.
I found nice balanced suspension.
Really nice. It doesn't dive much going into the corners. I like that. The rear end is very under control. There's no chatter from the rear wheel at all.
What did you think of those brakes?
It's phenomenal. Yeah. Phenomenal brakes.
There's a really nice sort of wide, generous, very retro-styled saddle. How did you find the riding position? The bar obviously is a little raised, the seat nice and wide, so how did it work for you?
Very familiar. It was just like stepping off the FJ actually. It's got the nice raised handlebars, a lowered seat, quite broad in its layout. Foot peg position is a little bit forward, I like that. Nice weight distribution between your hands, feet, and seat. I love it. I think it's great. I think Yamaha's progressed a lot since the model of FJ that I have, which was a 92.
Who does this bike appeal to? Who would you recommend this bike to? What kind of riding would they do?
I think somebody who wants to put some miles in the saddle, but they want to do it in a spirited way. They don't want to be left behind if the pace picks up a little bit. It certainly has the looks to draw them in a parking lot. I'd say somebody who's probably a little bit more mature, but somebody who's still got the spirit. I don't see getting tired of this one. That motor is just too special. It's as nice to ride as it is to look at. It's quite a machine.
Would you like to get back out on the runway?
I sure would.
Okay, thanks a lot, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.